So if there's a reluctance to talk about consent and some of those grey areas when you're at a party and, you know, it's getting pretty hot and heavy with a chick and then she doesn't want to have sex and then you kind of, you know, where does that go and how does that feel? Like, they're the conversations that I feel we need to be having with young fellas in those spaces.
Hi, thank you for tuning in. My guest today is a really good friend of mine. I'm going to call him brother, Camilo Demarco. Cam and I have been in the Rites of Passage space together for 10 years, holding and being held in a grassroots organisation called Castlemaine Rites of Passage in central Victoria. Cam and I are often on the phone trying to understand more about this work, how it fits into modern society and how to make it grow. Cam brings a unique perspective to this conversation through his work in family violence and men's behaviour change, also through his own experience of grief and loss. Cam sets the tone of the kind of conversations I want to have, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get this podcast off the ground. So join us as we try and understand rites of passage, healthy masculinity, in a way that better supports teenagers in our community and the world over. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm sitting on the lands of the Dja-Dja-Wurrung people. I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like to acknowledge that, given that this is a podcast about initiation and rites of passage, that something of that nature has been performed over tens of thousands of years in this country.
Thanks, mate.
You want to check in, mate?
I've got this big grant that we're pulling together, and you know, they come back and they ask for more information, kind of late minute. They need it by tomorrow, and you just got to pull it together. And sometimes it's some tricky stuff, and you just got to make it work because it's, you know, it's a lot of money, and it's a really competitive process. But if we get the rest of this money, the other half of the building money, well, then we can build the Mamanduk Gulk education place. It'll be cool. So we've got half of the 3.2, just need the other half. Just had to sort some shit out with Uncle Rick and just get his sign off on a couple of things and trust in whatever unfolds from there. Yeah, it's fine. It's good. It's good. I can just, yeah.
How do you come home to yourself?
Try and shake it off outside, connect with nature outside, tweak around in my garden, visualize building stuff, what do I want to do next, and you know, my life, my work in regards to community work and working for the organisation that I do for. It's so embedded in who I am and in line with my values and my world and my relationships, and that it's all merged, and I accept that and I'm okay with that. And there's times, and there's little practices that I do to create some separation if I'm feeling it. It might be a physical practice, or it might be like a somatic kind of thing, which I think is important, or it might be not taking the laptop into the bedroom, you know, not doing work stuff from my bed. And then there's other times where I will, and not get too caught up in the story, create stories for myself around that that's good or bad, because there's times where it's appropriate, there's just times where it's not. So just tune into what feels right and listen to that and then act on it. And I feel like I've got a pretty good balance. I feel like my work-life balance is, there's days that a work day that's cruisy, then there's other days where I'm doing stuff after hours or on a weekend, and it's really hard to track and log those kind of hours. And so I just got to tune into when I feel like I'm overcooking it, set some boundaries, say no to things, sometimes not answer some phone calls. And then there's other days where shit happens after hours, and that's part of the community work, and I'm okay with that. And then there's other times where I just dream and lay in bed at night, and not so much anymore, but when I used to work in the family violence sector in the Aboriginal community, working with men, having clients and fellas that you really like intense in the work with, there's times where, you know, you lay at night stressing about some things, and sometimes I just would fantasize about having a job where, like the local pub, I just go in, I wash all the dishes, the kitchen is left sparkly and clean, and all the stainless is all shiny, and you walk away and you do one last look in the room and you see the kitchen, it's all clean, and you go, fucking job done. And that the feeling, the idea of that, where it's complete, is great. And then there's some work that's just never complete, and you lay at bed at night stressing about and thinking about some stuff's big people's lives, and other stuff is like relationship things or other stresses, and there's something in the humbleness and the simplicity of shiny pots and pans and prep dishes that are all clean in the kitchen ready to go for the next day that feels pretty good. Yeah, but that's not my reality at the moment. I'm okay with that. When I'm not, I'll do something different. Let's do a complete reset. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for asking. It's a good question. And it speaks to self-care and how you look after yourself in what can be intense jobs sometimes.
There's a part of this built into this podcast, a little bit of a background, I suppose. I'm a fan of Nancy Klein, and she's got a theory and a bunch of books called Time to Think, and she has 10 conditions for a thinking environment, and one of her conditions is appreciation, and she thinks to get the best out of the human mind, it needs 5 times more appreciation than criticism.
External or self-appreciation?
I guess I would say, if I'm by myself and I want to think well, I probably want to appreciate myself 5 times more than I criticize myself. Yeah. But externally as well, if you're she talks about working in organizations and stuff. So built into this this podcast is my appreciation for you. And so this is the bit where I get to express that. Yeah. Man, I've known you for many years. We've been working in the Rites of Passage space for around 10 years together. I've seen you in the community giving so much more than just for yourself. I really appreciate our relationship. You're one of the rare people in my life. Give me so much and then also challenge me so hard. And I think that's really, really important. So it's something that I really value. Yeah, I value your authenticity and the way that you make it through the world. Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate that.
What is your experience with Rites of Passage?
What's my experience with Rites of Passage? Well, I guess probably about it was about 12 years, 11 or 12 years ago, I guess. A mutual friend of ours came to me and said that he was going on this weekend event. I clocked it pretty late, as in the weekend before, and details are pretty light and sketchy. There'd been an info night of sorts, I think, but I'd missed that. And I jumped on board. It resonated. I've been working in the men's space for a while in different ways, men's groups, other things, and so I loosely had an understanding of the concept, and it was something that I'd always wanted to do with my dad, but never had the opportunity to do. Dad had died that year, and so it came at a pretty good time. And I guess I'm familiar with the concept previous to that, and like most young adolescent males, had worked out shit on my own, just my own loose risk-taking behaviour, from crime to loose shit, dangerous stuff, drunken stuff. That was probably always on the radar. I'm not convinced that doing I haven't grown, Latino male, haven't really grown up in the cultural context of a Rites of Passage, so I can't say that if I had done this at 14, would it have changed my risk-taking behaviour? Probably not. But I guess I came to it at a time where I was already, I'd been in men's groups already, was familiar with a model of sitting in circle with men, speaking vulnerably. So that didn't feel uncomfortable. But I came to it at a time of grief. My dad had just passed that year, and it was a powerful experience, and fully dived in and journeyed through it, then popped out and reintegrated, and was really impressed by the men holding that space and the brothers that came on it with me. So decided to come back the following year, and that was pretty intense again, because my partner had just had a miscarriage, and that was pretty heavy, and I was pretty out of tune. I was out of touch with her needs. I left on this weekend to go away, and she really needed me, actually, and that was a pretty painful experience. At the return ceremony, she wasn't there, and that was pretty painful, watching everyone return to their families and be supported, and standing up on a significant spot in a particular space on your own felt pretty lonely, and it was heavy. And so I came home to Trish just having a miscarriage, and a whole bunch of shit to work through together. And to be honest, I just didn't really clock the impacts of losing a child, regardless of what stage it's at. I just didn't really understand the gravitas or how big that was, and I guess I was disconnected and out of touch, and I guess still running on the energy of having gone through it previously the year before, and I was going to do this thing again. It was really huge for me, and so had that experience, and again had a huge experience, and then the following year was that was a heavy year. So by then it's 2016, and that's the year that Trish died by suicide, and the Rites of Passage community and this community by then I was connected to were really supportive and pretty central in scaffolding my well-being and support during a huge time of grief and loss. And so I came through again and did it again, and that was the third year where I was grieving something, and it completely fell apart in that space, which was a beautiful thing, and felt really held and supported, and that was a huge journey that year. And then the following year, my dog died a year to the day that Trish died. Well, her dog, our dog, and that was fucked up as well. And always felt like a big kick in the guts losing him. It was such a connection to her, because it was her dog, and then became our dog when we hooked up. And just losing him on the anniversary of her dying was just so heavy. And so went into the next Rites of Passage carrying ongoing grief and layers of grief, really. And so my early experiences were a place of support, a place where I could be heard, witnessed, and held, and also do some of that for others to what capacity I had. They haven't been, they're not really, that's what they have been, and then they've continued to unfold from there. Obviously, I'm a healing journey now, 10 years. This year it's a 10-year anniversary since Trish passed away. Upgraded version of who I was back then, and have done heaps of work, and I'm in an awesome place. And so I can come to those spaces more in a support role, and less not about me, although it's always about me. Ultimately, it's always about us, I think, in those spaces, but I come with the intention to support, and it's not about my stories, just find ways to other men to share their stories and feel heard and connected and journey through their stuff. And so I guess what Rites of Passage hasn't been for me, it hasn't been a place where I've found my masculinity, or a place where I now feel transition from this thing to this thing. It just hasn't been. And I think some men come to those spaces seeking that. My experience has been that some men come to those spaces for whatever reason, whatever experiences, having some insecurities around their masculinity, having insecurities around relating to men, having some seeking connection, seeking that journey of going, okay, I've gone through this, now I'm a man, in whatever form. That's a pretty crude and simple form, but I have heard that experience quite often, and that's not my experience. I felt I've easily connected with a lot of men in my life, find it easy to connect with men, have experienced violence from men and have perpetrated violence on other men, but haven't felt unsafe around men. And so that hasn't been my experience in this kind of work, but I see that that's great value for fellas. And also, the transitioning thing, I don't think I've gone through a profound thing where I've gone from one stage of development in that sense to another, although it's been huge in my healing, my journey for sure. So that's where I've gone in the past 10 years. Things have shifted recently, I guess. Initiation work and rites of passage work, as I've shared with you before, I'm still reconciling how that looks on stolen land, how that looks on when, as you said in your acknowledgement, where we know that this is a process that has been available and is available to some men on some parts of this land, this country. But the little patch where I live in, and I'm connected to a lot of men here, Aboriginal men and Jara men of this land here, and that process, as it once was, as we know of, is not currently in the same form or in the same way. And so I've got some discomfort around being part of creating that space and delivering that when I've got some close brothers that I know and love that don't have that available to them, and I haven't had that conversation with around some of the cultural context and the setting and some of that, and I fully support other men finding ways to bring culture there, connect with whatever their culture might be, creating ceremony on land. I support that. I've seen it. I feel like the land is desperate for it and loves whenever someone brings ceremony back in whatever form. And so I'm just reconciling where I sit with it until I'm fully feel like I'm in my integrity with it. Until that time, I just kind of have pulled back. But I'm increasingly interested in the space between black fella, white fella, how that works together. It's the rain coming in.
Yeah, is that real loud?
Sounds good.
Is it?
It always comes at an appropriate time, It's rain's a bit of a reset or nourishing and good sign. So I'll take that as a good sign that I guess part of that conversation that I'm talking about around the interface between how we as settlers do this work here and how men who have connection to here that is tens of thousands of years old, what is available to them, I'm still, it feels, there's an edge there for me that I'm still working through. So that's where I'm currently sitting with it all in regards to Rites of Passage itself, and I still value its importance, and really, once again, just really, I'm so grateful for what it's brought to my life, possibly saved my life. Might just grab a water if you got a question for me.
Yeah, sure, bro. Yeah, I want to acknowledge all of that in that last share. Yeah. Just acknowledge your journey all through that. We speak a lot on the phone, you and I.
Yep.
More than anybody else, and really we speak a lot about this stuff. I'm curious, in that 12 years in the space, is there anything else that you've come to understand? Something that you've taken away from this work that has a significant meaning?
I think, I've done lots of group work, facilitation work, but I've seen in that space the magic that happens, and there's an energy that's created that is palpable and you can feel it when something happens, or there's an energetic shift, and then there's like a drop in that happens. Or I've learned in that space that because I've been in those circles over extended period for a number of years now, it's helped me be aware that there is an energy and that there is a tuning in that happens, and that the power of the group. That Rites of Passage space has helped me see that, and I've been able to bring some of that into my other work, group facilitation work, or different areas of my life where there's multiple people involved and there's some form of something going on. Yeah, so that's one of the things that's brought to me. It's just really drummed into me the importance of setting the container. Just skills that just carry over into other facilitation or other work life meetings. Being able to read the room, and being, working with experienced men who know how to manage a situation, and know how to find ways using words to slow down someone or speed them up, or ask someone to, move the energy on, or to work with dynamics that pop up. It's probably the only one of the few spaces in my life where I've had male mentors and role modeling some excellent work. If it wasn't for all those years in the Rites of Passage space, with some of the elders, I'd call elders in that space, seeing how they operate and feeling how they operate, like that's real. That stuff has rubbed off on me, and I can't really name how or what, but I wouldn't have experienced that otherwise. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that. Yeah.
You mentioned container before.
Yeah.
The importance of setting a container. Can you explain what a container is and what's the importance of setting it?
Yeah, so I guess I'd name that as a setting the space, setting some of the agreements around it, and just creating an environment where people kind of know on some level what they might be getting into, what to expect, and what not to expect, and some of that's around just the time. How long am I going to be sitting here for? And I guess I've worked in youth justice in the prison setting, and I've worked with Aboriginal men for a long time, and lots of men who've experienced trauma and some heavy shit. And some fellas need to know what the fuck is going on. How long are you going to have me here? Where's the exit? Like, how do I get out of this space? Who's who in the zoo? Some kind of basic things, just some parameters around things, just to kind of give it some shape and setting, and some level of boundaries, so that fellas know what they're walking into, or what they're not walking into, but what they're going to be sitting in, and what the rules of engagement are. And my experience has been, if you don't have that, it can get pretty loose pretty quick, and then it's an uphill battle to have to wrapping someone up, as far as someone who's overly talking too much, or something that's going sideways, or completely off topic, or storytelling, or coming and going, stepping and walking off to have a smoke, take a piss, whatever. Just some of the looseness that can happen in a group that can have impact and be really distracting is part of what I'd call as setting the container, and just helps make it work. And then, so we used to run this family violence program, Meriji Murupuk, and out on country with fellas and elders, and I'd always generally have a couple of guys in there that are really green and young, and then a couple of older guys, and a guy or two that might have done the program before. And I'll always word up that guy beforehand who's been in the program before to role model. And I'll say, bro, it's really good when you do X, Y, Z, or if you want to share that story, or blah, blah, blah. Just so to support him, to beyond just pumping his tires, other fellas will listen to him, and it kind of sets the tone for the group, and then it just makes it way easier. Does that answer your question, mate?
Yeah, that's a beautiful answer, man. So I guess what I hear is this is about creating safety. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, in different ways, yeah. And particularly with men or youth who are used to not feeling safe to talk about stuff, they need to know. There needs to be if that trust gets broken and something gets talked out of school, someone talks about something that outside that space, and then I've had that before. It's a long way back, trying to get others to feel trust that in the Aboriginal community everyone knows each other often. Yeah, it's extra so when you're working with people who may have experienced trauma or are carrying a lot in their backpack. And to create a space for them to open up and share and start doing, support them to do the work for themselves, really that setting that container and having some safety in that space is really important.
Yeah, sounds like to get to that point, agreements are important. What are some agreements that you've experienced help to create that safe container?
Yeah, the one that I just shared about what's shared here stays here, super important. Some agreements around using I statements and speaking from your own experience. Focusing on speaking from your own experience and from your heart rather than just storytelling and just going off sideways and talking about other random shit. Speaking respectfully, and just some logistical things around times and phones and piss breaks. Yeah, the core kind of things that come up in these spaces that just help to keep it on track, and in the groups that I've run in some of those settings, I always try and get the guys that you want them to come up with a group agreement themselves, so that they've got their own buy-in, and it's just not me as a facilitator in some sort of power over scenario dictating what this is. It's like you want the group to come up with a group agreement. It's not a CAM agreement; it's a group agreement. And then often facilitation spaces, write it up on the wall so that everyone knows what it is. Come back to it. Yeah, basic 101, Damo.
Yeah, so once you've created this safe container,
Yeah.
men have met, they've made agreements, they've kept the agreements to a degree that the space feels safe. What's the potential of that space? What can happen when men sit in a safe container?
Well, that's when the magic happens, eh? So I've experienced men sharing some. I've been in men's groups before where some new bloke rocks up and I just see him just spews out all this shit that he's been holding in for 20 years and never had a chance to talk about. And I go, holy fuck, this bloke has been carrying all that stuff and never had someone to hear him out. I've witnessed that. That's really beautiful and powerful. That's some of the magic. I think it has the potential to create a space where people's edges and conflicts can arise, and people feel safe to verbalize things or name some shit that they might be feeling that they may not otherwise, and then there's the potential for some sharing and reflection and some feedback and some healing to happen and understanding. And when I've seen that done well and executed well, then it's beautiful role modeling for the rest of the group, and it deepens the connection and it deepens the trust in the group, and sets a good standard that we can work through some shit in this space. And I always say, if we can't work this shit out in our men's groups, then how are we meant to go out and do it in the real world, out when you're out in the street or when you're in the workplace, when you don't have that same safety? Like if we can't be doing this, having those hard yarns, working through some conflict, and naming some shit in amongst the safety of a men's group, then I don't reckon you can do it anywhere. That is, given you've got some good support and processes and containers well set and agreements around language and and some solid men in there. It's a beautiful thing. So I think that's part of the potential of these spaces, and just a new way of being. Like for so many men, we've just grown up with other men in our lives who cannot, just such dysfunction. It's an opportunity for growth and change and resetting the bar and resetting for the young fellas that come after us, that are going to be in relationship with themselves and with others. And part of the change. It's a beautiful thing, and I've seen that as well. Yeah, real healing. So yeah, it feels for me. It's always, I call it life work. It's just ongoing. The first time I came to a men's group, I just broke up with the mother of my child, and a mate of mine said, so this is probably 22. My daughter's 20. She was a year old. So yeah, 19 years ago, whatever. He said, "Oh, you should come to this group." I was like, "All right, I'll give that a go." So I rocked up. It was the first time, and it was a new language that these guys were talking. I was like, "What the fuck is going on here?" And I was just like, "Okay, this is different," but I really got something out of it, and I came back, and then I kept coming back, and I got to a point where I was like, listen to some of these guys. I thought, fuck, like these guys, they got so much shit going on in my life, and I couldn't pitch match their level of trauma and heavy shit in their lives and fuck ups. And my life hasn't been easy, but at that point, didn't think I had much material to work with, and so I just kind of rock up each week, fortnight, scratching around, probably adding 50% exaggeration to whatever the drama in my life was at that time. But that was pretty naive, because I've just learned with time that the deeper you go into this work, the more you unpeel the layers of stuff that you got going on. It just gets deeper and deeper, and there is more to work through, and it just gets richer and richer. And I think there's past life stuff going on that I don't even know about that is yet to unpack. So it's life work. It's just endless, and yeah, I'm okay with that.
There's this question that's sort of sitting there. So you indicated that you never had an experience in Rite of Passage where you crossed that threshold, moved from one state of being to another, after which you were never the same again.
No, I don't reckon I said that.
Beautiful.
More in a classic sense, like from a boy to man type energy.
Got it.
I've certainly had experiences where I was like, holy shit, I've never felt that before. Yeah, I've channeled like an animal, a goat, in that space. Yeah, I've had some wild experiences that I've experienced stuff in the Rites of Passage space that I'd never experienced before, and that were profound, and that would change me as a man, as for who I am. But yeah, more, I was just referring to in that classic kind, the boy to man transition thing. Oh, I was a boy then, and now I'm a man. And I guess in some ways I was, it was like, but it happened over time. Hasn't felt like such a linear thing, or hasn't felt like, if you ask me, okay, we do this Rites of Passage work. There's different organisations doing it in different ways. Bring your son along. He's going to experience this thing where he's going to transition. He's going to go from this. Well, he's going to go through. We hope the intention is he'll go through a transition process, and in the perfect world, he won't do dumb shit. He won't surf on the top of a car. He's not going to do crazy shit pissed and jump off that thing. But let's be honest, he probably still is. He may not, but for me to think that doing a Rites of Passage weekend for a family is going to avoid a whole bunch of crazy shit that young fella may or may not do is probably naive and not my experience of how life works. And what's important is the ongoing work. And that's the missing piece that I've felt often with Rites of Passage weekends. What's the follow-up? What's the ongoing piece? Who are the male mentors in that young fella's life that he can turn to? Because there is no way when I was doing crazy shit I'd ever talk to my dad about it. And all my uncles are in Uruguay. There's no one I could talk to. But if I had someone that I could bounce stuff off or ring when I'd fucked up bad, that would have been gold. That would have been huge. So if a Rites of Passage weekend can create those ongoing relationships and find a way to, when there's a connection between a young fella and another man that's not his dad on those weekends, if there's a way to continue that connection and facilitate ongoing support, I go, okay, yeah, that can change a fella's life. That's solid impact. And we have it a little bit in this town. We're in a small town, so it kind of helps make it happen. And I've got some young fellas through, as you know, we used to run a young men's group that was part of the follow-up after Rites of Passage. So every fortnight, we'd get some pizzas, young fellas would come, we'd do a feed, and we'd do a check-in. for young men who've come through a rites of passage previously as part of that ongoing engagement. And it was great some weeks, and it was hit and miss other weeks. There was no charge, so therefore there's no real onus on the family to really push it. The families that did really saw the value in it and loved what we were doing, valued what it brought to the young fella, but there was no financial contribution, so no real buy-in. So some weeks, just and if a young fella doesn't want to go, he doesn't have to go. So there's different reasons why it hasn't continued, but we go for a few years. And so my energy, I've got energy for that kind of work because I think I didn't have that in my life, and I know its importance. And it's also an edge for some older men. Some older fellas are find that there's an edge with working with young people. They've got a discomfort in it, for whatever reason that might be. Yeah, so it's probably a healthy process for some older men and younger fellas. It's a two-way. There's a two-way learning and growth in it, for sure. It's not just one way, and it shouldn't be, because then it's just it feels like a power over model. It's like the older man gets something from this as well, and young people keep you youthful, right? I reckon. Open to new ideas, new ways of thinking, new perspectives, call you out on shit. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, it's good to hear about those circles that you were on, and I forgot about those. Last week I interviewed Steve Hill and forgot to press record. It was an amazing interview. He shared some really amazing initiation stories of his own, and the question arose about, I guess, this thing between traditional rites of passage and contemporary rites of passage, and I think you just spoke to it. What can we? And this is Steve's response was, "What can we do in a weekend? In a traditional rite of passage, this might have gone for weeks, might have gone for months, it might have gone for years." He shared an initiation story with an elder that lasted 5 years, and partly I think that follow-up's it. But when after that sat with me, I thought, and you shared it too. You came back to a rite of passage, and you came back the next year, and you came back the next year, and you're just diving down into this full-on work and pain, and then up again and back the next year. And for myself, I've had similar experiences, and I feel like it is for 3 or 4 or 5 years. That was my initiation. I kept coming back, and I'm being pretty useful, but at the same time, I'm here for myself. I'm here to heal myself, and that might be a yearly weekend that you get to do, and it might be a year. But it feels like that ongoing work is more like it than I leave on Thursday a boy and I come back Sunday a man.
Yeah, and I don't reckon any parent really would believe that, but I do think that is in the kind of that is a little bit in the perception or the pitch or the. I'm gonna go do a rites of passage weekend with my son. Me and my son. I think the cliche is that he's gonna come back, having gone through this journey, and things are gonna change, and he's gonna be a changed boy now into a man. I think that's in the myth of it somehow, or in the kind of the story of it, and it's just a real simplification of what goes on, and it's not accurate. And I'm wondering how relevant that is these days. I'd be interested to know if someone had the data or could really understand or get a read on, is this still relevant today? And I don't have an answer to that, but I'm curious about that question. What is the rites of passage relevance today? And I wonder if it's changed or it looks different.
It sounds like the event's not matching the marketing material, mate.
Whose marketing material?
This Boys to Men marketing material. I'm going to go away with my son.
Yeah.
I'm going to come back on Sunday. He's going to be a man.
Yeah. Yeah, you're setting the bar pretty high. You're really naming the transformation. A huge, significant transformation is going to happen. So how's it look on Monday night when he's been a rude prick to his mum and nothing's changed? How's she feeling? What's she saying? What's Dad saying? How's he feeling? And then he's going, oh, what's the follow up look like? We really struggled when we got back from that weekend. He was good for a few days. He went straight back to his room, straight to gaming, wasn't coming out for dinner, wasn't doing the shit he's supposed to do, spoke like an entitled little rude prick to his sisters and his mums, and we didn't get the boy. We still got the boy. I want my money back. How does that? I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that happens a lot. So yeah, maybe we need to be careful how you pitch this kind of stuff.
How would you pitch it? You're good with jingles.
I am good with a jingle, you're right. I reckon Boys to Men is cliched and it's a little bit outdated, to be honest. I do. And it's just setting a high bar. I'd probably pitch it around connection, accountability, some challenging conversations in a safe space, with the themes, some contemporary themes around misogyny, porn, violence, disconnect, the kind of stuff that parents and a lot of mums are worried about. I just know they are. And my experience has been in these spaces that men don't want to talk about, don't really want to go there with the young fellas because they don't want to go there themselves. It's an edge for the old blokes too. And so what they talk about is wounds that have happened, pain from a mum, a dad, this thing, this disconnect from a partner. But when you talk about some shaming subjects or go into some of the nitty gritty, it's a bit quieter or you don't hear it come up. That's been my experience. Because it's feels pretty easy and safe to talk about the hard childhood you had or stuff that went down with your mum and your dad or early rejection or whatever those themes might be. But to talk about when you might be using porn, how you've hidden it in the past, shame around it, or other murky stuff that must go on for men. I mean, gambling's one. Like, you look statistically, gambling, how common that is, especially with phones and how easy it is to do. I never heard that come up in a men's group. Very rarely. But you look at the statistics, there must be blokes in men's groups I've sat in that are secretly gambling their money away. Never heard it come up. So I think some of the things that, again, a little bit of reluctance to talk about with young teenage men is because it's hard to talk about. Some men might be reluctant to talk about it themselves. So, when conversations around consent with girls, like, I've got no doubt there's plenty of men that I've sat in circles with that have done some dodgy shit and haven't really, at a loose party, consent's been kind of grey. I haven't really heard that come up much in men's sharing, and statistically, it has to have happened. So if there's a reluctance to talk about consent and some of those grey areas when you're at a party and it's getting pretty hot and heavy with a chick, and then she doesn't want to suck your cock or give you a hand job or have sex, and then you kind of, where does that go and how's that feel? Like, they're the conversations that I feel we need to be having with young fellas in those spaces. And I think it's probably important that men have reconciled that for themselves or worked through some of that stuff and have felt comfortable sharing it and owning it, reflecting on it, and then doing the work to be able to then bring those conversations with a teenager, because there's one thing in role modeling, but you also don't reckon that you want to be unpacking some of your own stuff around that in the presence of 14-year-old boys. I'm not sure that's a good thing. Yeah. There's some of the edges that I'm interested in this space. Because it's easy to go through men's work or a sharing circle or some of this stuff and just lightly touch on some of the easy subjects that feel a bit safe. But, I can get bored pretty easy. And then when something edgy comes up in a group, you go, okay, now I'm back in. Like, yep, good. Yeah, this has got some energy and life, rather than just to I don't want my men's work just to be kind of cruise mode, autopilot. I just feel like I'm not getting enough from it, and I'll do something. I want to do something else. Yeah.
Is there anything more you think or feel or want to say?
I feel pretty enlivened by the conversation. I feel myself wanting to get back in and have some uncomfortable conversations in a safe and good setting with men and young fellas. I feel like my work's not done in this space, but I just don't want to do more of the same of what I've done. It's probably just not enough for me, or maybe I'm just in a different place, or I've got some judgments around what goes on. But I see I've still got energy for this. I see men have been asked a question by society and by women, need men to stand up. I call it like a stand up, sit down space. Men don't know. I've been to conferences, family violence conferences, where someone will, a woman will. They're generally 90% women in those spaces, and someone will get up and go, well, how come we need the men standing up to? They should be speaking here and talking about dot 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 dot. That you get that energy, like where's all the men? And then you get other energy of like, sit down. You men have been talking you've had the microphone for long enough in society. It's time for women. Like we've heard enough male voices. You dominate the spaces. We need the women. And then men hear that. So they hear the two narratives. So they kind of like fellas who have good intention in these spaces. They're in this stand up, sit down space. They don't know if they're meant to stand up and kind of go, oh, fucking say something, or if they go, sit down, let the women speak. It's time we took a back seat. And it's messy. And understand the anger is palpable, and why we have these issues between genders. And I'm also interested in working men and women together in a space where we can connect and unpack some of this stuff and talk about it. So yeah, coming back to young fellas see that. They hear about misogyny. It's a confusing time, and so I feel as men who are on this path doing this work, one of those men, I feel I have a responsibility to support and engage and have these yarns, and I've got energy for it still. So yeah, having this conversation has reminded me I'm still passionate about this work. So thank you.
That's beautiful, man.
Keep up the good work, brother.
Yeah, nice one, bro.
Thanks, man.
Thank
Lots
you.
of love.
Lots of love. Bye.
See ya.